All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Excited to be here.
Today, we're tackling something pretty big, something that always makes headlines.
Definitely makes headlines.
Mergers and acquisitions agreements, M&A agreements.
Yeah, those.
We hear about these massive deals,
Right.
companies joining forces or one gobbling up another. But have you ever stopped to think about, like, the nitty-gritty of how these things actually happen?
Right. All the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Exactly. And that's where we're going today. We've got a super interesting snippet all about M&A agreements. Plus, we'll get into this company called Legitt AI.
Oh, interesting.
They're apparently doing some cool things in this space.
I've heard of them.
So our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to really unpack what an M&A agreement is,
Okay.
why it's so crucial, and peek under the hood at those key elements, those moving parts that make these agreements tick.
Sounds good. Let's dive in.
All right, so first things first, what exactly are we talking about here?
Right.
What is an M&A agreement?
Well, our source defines it as a pivotal contract.
Pivotal.
Yeah, and pivotal's a good word because, we're talking about two companies coming together.
Right.
Either through a merger, where it's like kind of equals joining forces, or an acquisition where one company absorbs the other. And this contract basically governs, like, the whole thing.
So it's like the rule book for the whole merger or acquisition.
Exactly, the roadmap. It outlines the terms, all the details, which assets are being transferred, who's responsible for what liabilities, the financials, all of that.
So it's not just like a handshake and, hey, let's merge.
Definitely not.
This is serious business.
Very serious.
So why is it so important?
Yeah, why do you need a solid M&A agreement?
I mean, what happens if you don't have one?
Well, I think we've all seen those headlines, right?
Oh, yeah.
Companies merging, things going south, and then bam, lawsuits.
Oh, yeah.
Years of litigation, fighting over, like, who owns what, who's responsible for this debt, all that messy stuff. A strong, well-crafted M&A agreement can prevent a lot of that.
So it's about clarity and protection.
Absolutely. It's like, think of it this way. You wouldn't buy a house without a contract. Right out.
No way.
That's a big commitment. You need to know exactly what you're getting into.
Absolutely.
An M&A agreement is the same thing, just on a much larger scale. It ensures transparency.
Right. It protects both sides.
Exactly.
So, okay, I'm starting to get it, but all of this sounds pretty complicated. What kind of stuff, what are the actual elements that go into one of these agreements?
Okay, well, there are a lot of moving parts, I'm not going to lie. But let's try to break it down. First, you have the transaction structure.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Basically, how is the deal structured?
Okay.
Is it a merger of equals where both companies are kind of on the same level?
Right.
Or is it an acquisition where one company is clearly the acquirer, the bigger fish, so to speak?
The bigger fish?
Right. Then you have valuation.
So like putting a price tag on the whole thing.
Exactly. How much is the deal worth? How do you determine that?
Right, because you got to agree on that number.
Yeah, you don't want any surprises there. And then, of course, there's the payment method.
Cash, stock, magic beans. What are we talking?
Well, probably not magic beans,
Okay, good to know.
but it could be cash, stock, or a combination. That all gets spelled out.
Okay, so there's a lot here already.
Oh, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, no.
But don't worry, it gets more interesting. Then you have things like representations and warranties.
Representations and warranties. What are those?
Basically, promises that each company makes about their business.
Okay.
Things like, we don't have any hidden lawsuits, our financials are accurate, no skeletons in the closet.
So you're not buying a problem, basically.
Exactly. You want to make sure you're getting what you paid for.
Yeah.
And that's where indemnification comes in.
Okay, indemnification. Another big word.
It's like an insurance policy within the agreement.
Okay, how so?
Let's say, one company promises that they have no outstanding debts. But then, surprise, $1 million debt pops up after the merger is done.
Well, that would be bad.
Yeah, not good. Indemnification dictates who's responsible for that debt.
So it's like a safety net
Exactly.
to protect both sides from those nasty surprises.
All right.
I like it. What else?
Let's see. Then there are things like termination rights.
Termination rights, meaning?
Under what circumstances can the deal be called off? Sometimes things happen, markets shift, something unexpected comes up.
Right.
So you need to have a clear exit strategy in those situations.
That makes sense.
And finally, there are post-closing covenants.
So even after the merger's done, there's still stuff to think about.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Well, it outlines the obligations each party has even after the deal is closed. Things like non-compete clauses, confidentiality agreements, stuff like that.
so it's not just, it's like, see you later, good luck. There's still some follow through.
Exactly. It's a long-term commitment.
Wow. So, I mean, this is like a legal mountain,
Yeah,
right?
it can seem that
All
way.
these moving parts, all these details, all this legal jargon.
For sure.
You might be thinking there's got to be an easier way.
Right.
And that's where this company, Legitt AI, comes in.
Ah,
They're
yeah.
using technology to like simplify this whole M&A agreement process, right?
Exactly. They're basically revolutionizing it. Instead of, hiring a team of lawyers to draft a 100-page document from scratch,
Right.
Legitt AI uses AI and algorithms to customize contracts, based on the specifics of each deal.
Oh, interesting. So it's tailored to each individual situation.
Yes. And it ensures everything is legally sound, up to date with all the latest regulations.
So it's like having like an expert legal team, but in software form.
Pretty much.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And our source highlights, a bunch of benefits.
Like what?
Customization, we talked about that. Legal soundness, of course, but also speed.
So it's faster.
Much faster. And reduced complexity.
So it takes like the headache out of the legal stuff.
Exactly.
It's got to be a relief for companies going through this process.
Definitely.
So big picture, it sounds like M&A agreements, they're kind of essential, right?
Absolutely.
If you want a smooth, legally sound merger or acquisition,
Couldn't agree more.
they're complex, no doubt, but they protect both sides. They ensure transparency.
It's all about minimizing risk.
Exactly. And like we said, Legitt AI is making this whole thing more accessible, less daunting.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked a lot about the legal stuff, the nuts and bolts of these agreements. But at the end of the day, mergers and acquisitions, they're not just about contracts.
True.
You're combining companies, but you're also combining people, cultures.
Right.
You've got different ways of working, different values,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes those things clash.
Oh, yeah. Culture clashes can be a real challenge.
Exactly. So I'm wondering, how can an M&A agreement address that human side of things?
Interesting question.
How can you build in some safeguards, some like cultural integration strategies to smooth that transition?
That's a really good point. Something to think about for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's something for everyone to ponder.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time.
See ya.